Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. In today's video we are going to be doing another unboxing. We have 5 models in this box here, and one of them is a Phoenix model. Now Phoenix, I have a fair few Phoenix models in my collection, but as of late my Phoenix collecting has declined. In fact, I only on average now get one Phoenix model a year, and so the 2022 Phoenix model that will be joining my collection is in this box. In 2021 I got the Phoenix Royal Air Maroc 787-8, and that was the only Phoenix model I got in 2021, and in 2022 we have the Phoenix model inside here, but the other 4 are all Gemini jets. But with that being said, let's just go ahead. I'm going to take the entire box off to the side now, and then we're going to get out the models one by one. So starting off with some of the Gemini jets models, here we have a couple Gemini Max models. So starting off here we have a US Air Force C-17. Now I currently have 3 C-17s in my collection, but surprisingly I don't have a US Air Force C-17 yet, which for those of you who don't know, the US Air Force are the primary operator of the C-17, so it's pretty shocking that I don't yet have a US Air Force C-17, but that changes today with this Dover Air Force Base C-17. Next after that we have another Gemini Max model. This is also a US Air Force aircraft, and we have my third US Air Force KC-135. This is a Seymour Johnson KC-135, which is an Air Force base in North Carolina, and that's pretty important because the other 2 KC-135s that I have are West Coast KC-135s. I have an Arizona KC-135 and a Hawaiian KC-135. So this is my first East Coast KC-135. But moving that off to the side, we're now going to move on to our next model, which is the Gemini Jets American Retro Embraer 170. I was pretty on the fence about purchasing this aircraft, but I decided, especially for DCA, that I would get this in the end. So there we go, we have the American Eagle Embraer 170 there. Then after that we have the last Gemini Jets model of this unboxing, and this is also a new airline and new aircraft into my collection, but we have the Gemini Jets Breeze Embraer 195. The E195 is the rarest subtype in the E-Jet family. Of course, you have the Embraer 170, the Embraer 175, the Embraer 190, and the Embraer 195, but out of all those 4 different types of aircraft, they built least of the Embraer 195s, and because of that, I have yet to have one of these in my collection. However, I have actually flown on an Embraer 195 in real life. I flew the Orney Embraer 195 from Guernsey to London Gatwick, so I do have experience on board a real-life Embraer 195, I just don't have one in my collection yet. And moving this model off to the side, we can now reveal the final model of this unboxing, and my only Phoenix model of 2022. We have the Russian government IL-96. This is a pretty interesting aircraft, especially in terms of where the world is right now with global politics and everything like that. But this is a pretty iconic aircraft. This is Putin's personal VIP transport that he uses to fly wherever it is in the world, and of course the Russian government also use it without Putin for transportation of diplomats or government officials. But with that being said, we're now going to move this one off to the side, and we're now going to get them out in detail. Okay, and so starting off today, here we have the Dover Air Force Base US Air Force C-17. While I did want to get a US Air Force C-17, there is something pretty special about the Dover Air Force Base C-17, and that is that Dover is the closest C-17 and C-5 base to the DC area. And I do also have the Dover Air Force Base C-5 in my collection. I got that a couple years back, so this is going to look really good alongside that aircraft. And also, as you can probably tell by the writing on the box here, this is also a pretty significant individual aircraft, because if you remember back to 2021, the US withdrawal of Afghanistan, you'll remember the images of that C-17 taking off from Kabul with the people, the Afghan people, hanging onto the aircraft. This is that specific aircraft that was flying out of Kabul when that happened. It also broke a record with the highest evacuation passenger count on board any aircraft ever. In fact, 823 passengers were on board the C-17 as it took off from Kabul and flew over to Qatar. Of course, it was one of those situations where it was partly joyful, partly sad, because of course, while this aircraft was able to deliver 823 passengers to safety, there are of course so many others that weren't able to join those passengers to safety, including the people that were hanging onto the aircraft as it took off from Kabul and they fell to their deaths. While it is pretty cool that this C-17 is that exact aircraft, I didn't really get it because of that. I mainly got it just because it is a Dover C-17. And with that being said, we can go ahead now and open this box. So inside here, of course, we have the classic Gemini Jets cradle. So just taking the top off the box there, we got the plastic on the top. And here we go, my fourth C-17 into the collection. Okay, so starting off at the front of the aircraft, here we have the C-17 nosepiece here with the forward landing gear. We have the cockpit windows there. We have the US Air Force titles. We have the forward boarding door there. And then moving back on the aircraft here, of course, we have the engines on board the C-17. And then moving to the rear of the aircraft, here we have the US military logo there. We have the giant rear doors of the C-17. We have the giant T-tail at the back here. We have the Dover Air Force base stripe there. We have the US flag and the horizontal stabilizers on top of the tail there. And overall, it's a pretty cool model. My in-depth review wasn't that long just because, well, it's a C-17. We've unboxed C-17s in the past, and I'm sure we'll unbox more in the future. Gemini Jets have kind of really just nailed the C-17 mold. It doesn't need improving. It's just a pretty rounded, nice model. And of course, as well, the nature of a lot of C-17 liveries, they're quite basic, just grey aircraft with minimal differences on each aircraft. So yeah, there's not a lot really to go over. And with that being said, we're now going to move on to the next aircraft, which is the Seymour Johnson KC-135. It's been a pretty long time since I've unboxed a KC-135. I got both of my KC-135s at the exact same time. I actually bought both of my current KC-135s at the Gemini Jet store in Las Vegas. So I got them all the way back in, I want to say 2018 it was actually. Wow, that was a very long time ago. Almost 4 years ago I got my KC-135s, which is crazy. But here we have my third KC-135, which is, of course, as I said, the Seymour Johnson KC-135. Now, as you can see by the writing here as well, I don't know whether this is something Gemini Jets are going to continue with, kind of releasing, you know, specific aircraft that have some backstory, but the reason why this text is here is because Seymour Johnson have now retired their KC-135s from operation. Of course, it's a pretty well-known fact that the KC-135 is coming towards the end of operations. The US Air Force are currently undergoing a process to replace all of their KC-135s. They still do operate quite a number of them in various places, but the Seymour Johnson group have finally retired their last KC-135, and they are going to be replacing them with the KC-46, which is of course based on the Boeing 767, while as the KC-135 was based on the Boeing 707. Currently, the KC-135s, there are still quite a lot in operation. The US Air Force have 394 still in active service, and they only have 48 of the KC-46s, but of course the numbers of the KC-46s are going to go up and the number of the KC-135s are going to go down. The Seymour Johnson Air Force Base operated the KC-135 from 1995 all the way up to February 2020, when of course the last one was retired. It doesn't really faze me, however, that these are retired, because of course with my military collection I tend to not collect what's in service. I tend to collect just what looks cool, and I really liked the color scheme. Of course, it's not really a major color scheme. It's a little bit of green on the tail, but apart from that, it's a pretty basic aircraft, but I did like the touch of green on the tail. So with that being said, we are now going to go ahead and unbox my third KC-135. And here we go, here is the KC-135. So starting off here at the nose, of course, we have that classic look to the 707. Of course, the 707, 727 and 737 all have very similar looking noses. If you just cut the front off, it would be pretty hard to tell whether this was a 737, a 727 or a 707. But there we go. Of course, at the front here, we have the US Air Force titles there, and we have the forward landing gear, and we have the forward cargo door on the KC-135 rather. And then here, moving to the rear of the aircraft, of course we have the 4 engines of the KC-135. It's going to be very sad to see the 4-engined aircraft go in replacement of the 2-engined KC-46s. But here at the rear of the aircraft, as you can see, we have the US military logo there. We have the boom pole, of course. That's the primary reason why the KC-135s exist. Right there, of course, that folds down, and then of course you can mid-air refuel with this aircraft. And then here on the tail, we have the Seymour Johnson band there with the green. We have the US flag, and we have the little antenna on the top of the tail, which looks really, really cool. And yeah, just like that, that concludes concludes the Seymour Johnson KC-135, we're now going to move on to our next aircraft, which is the American Eagle retro livery Embraer 170. Now, for those of you who don't know, pre-2013, pre-US-American merger, all of the American Eagle aircraft used to look like this. Of course, it's an opposite of the American mainline livery, which of course, instead of the white on this aircraft, they had the chrome, and then of course on the American Eagle aircraft, instead of the chrome, they had the white. This aircraft in particular, however, never operated pre-2013 with American Eagle. In fact, this aircraft is pretty interesting because this is an ex-British Airways Cityflyer aircraft. Now, I do actually have a British Airways Cityflyer Embraer 170. I did check to see the registrations if they matched up, but they don't. This aircraft in particular used to be a Golf Lima Charlie Yankee Delta, and the British Airways Cityflyer E170 that Gemini Jets released is a Golf Lima Charlie Yankee Golf. So it's not the same aircraft, which is unfortunate. It would have been pretty cool if it was, but there we go. British Airways Cityflyer retired all of their Embraer 170s in favor of the Embraer 190 at the start of 2021. Not many Embraer 170s are in operation with American Eagle. In total, only 10 are in operation, 7 with Republic Airways and 3 with Envoy Air. But with that being said, we're just going to go ahead now and open up this box. And here we go. I think this is a really nice livery, especially when compared to all of the kind of vaguely boring American Eagle aircraft in the grey colour scheme that we have today. This one adds some colour to the fleet. But here we have the nose of course, the Embraer 170. All of the E-Jet family essentially look the same, they're just different lengths. But here at the front here, we have the cockpit windows there. We have the L1 door there. We have the forward landing gear. Moving back, of course, in that blue stripe, we have all the windows there, if you can see that. They're kind of blended into that blue there. But then we have the classic American Eagle titles there with that engine. And then moving to the rear of the aircraft, we have the registration, which reads November 760 Mike Quebec, I think that is, or an O it might be. I'm not really sure. I can't really see from this distance. We have the rear door here. We have the APU and of course the tail with that classic American Eagle logo on the tail there. It looks really, really good. And then here we also have the US flag. I'm definitely going to really enjoy adding this into some of my DCA updates. Of course, usually my American Eagle lineup is vaguely the same, you know, with all of the American logos. It kind of gets a bit old, so it's going to be really nice to have that kind of shining beacon among all of the similar looking aircraft. We're going to have this bright white aircraft in midst of all of the boring grey American Eagle aircraft that we have today. So that's going to be really cool. I'm hoping to have that in my next DC update, but we'll have to see. So with that, we're now going to move on to the next aircraft, which is the Breeze Embraer 195. Now, Breeze are a fairly new airline to the US. They were founded back in 2018. However, they only commenced operations in 2021. They're still a pretty small airline, as I said. They only have 3 of these Embraer 195s with 4 on order. They have 10 Embraer 190s, which is this aircraft's essentially just a little bit shorter. And they also have 4 Airbus A220-300s with a total of 80 on order. So Breeze will grow over the next few years, especially with that massive A220 order. I do also have the Breeze A220 on order. Gemini Jets did just release that aircraft, and of course I'd imagine that the A220s will vastly outweigh the Embraers. I don't know whether they have some retirement plans for the Embraers once they get enough A220s, or they're going to keep these on. I'm not really sure how Breeze are going to go along with that, but for now we have this Breeze Embraer 195. And so with that being said, we're now going to go ahead and open up this box. And here we go, my first Embraer 195 in the collection. One thing you have to say about the Breeze livery is it is definitely nowhere near a Euro white livery. I don't think there is even a speck of white on this aircraft. The main fuselage is covered in this almost like this powder blue color. It looks pretty cool. And then of course, starting off at the front of the aircraft, here we have the cockpit windows, we have the L1 door here, we have the forward landing gear, the Breeze titles, which looks pretty cool, and then of course we have the windows stretching back, we have the emergency exit, we then have one of the engines, and then moving to the rear of the aircraft, if we move that along, we have the registration, which I can't really read. November India 308 Zulu, I think that says 30. Can't see if that's an 8 or a B. It's too tiny. I can't read the registration, but there we go. We've got the rear door here, and then of course we have the Breeze tail, which also looks really, really cool. Breeze unfortunately don't currently have any operations into the DC area, but I kind of bought this model hoping they will start some services along with a Velo as well. I would love a Velo to start operations into the DC area. Well, they have started into Baltimore, but I'm hoping more kind of proper DC area, so Dallas and Reagan. It would be pretty cool to see something like a Richmond to a Reagan flight on board the Embraer or the A220. I think that would be pretty cool, or just Dallas or wherever. I just want to see Breeze in the DC area, and I'm hoping that will happen. With Breeze expanding, I'm sure that will happen eventually, as DC is one of the most prominent cities along the East Coast. But there we go. Apart from that, that concludes the Breeze Embraer 195, and we're now going to move on to the final model of today's unboxing, which is the Russian government Il-62. Now, the production of these aircraft is a very weird one. Only 30 of these aircraft have been built, and they're technically not out of production yet, but they're produced in a really weird way. The first flight of the Il-96 was all the way back in 1988, and the introduction to Aeroflot was in 1992. And while they haven't produced any of these aircraft since 2017, that doesn't really mean that they're out of production. As I said, only 30 have been built, but they produce them in a really weird way. They'll produce maybe 2 in a year, and then they won't build any for another 5 years. And especially with, of course, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Boeing and Airbus have stopped supporting maintenance and parts for Russian registered Boeing and Airbus aircraft. Of course, Boeing and Airbus aircraft do make up the majority of airlines like Aeroflot's fleet. So airlines like Aeroflot are either going to have to find some way around that or start operating more Russian-built aircraft, like, for example, this Il-96. So there are talks about, production going up of Russian-built aircraft like this aircraft in particular. So in the next few years, we could see more of these aircraft being produced, or we could not, depending how this kind of Russian invasion goes on in the future. But for now, we have 30 of these aircraft, and Russia actually use a couple of these as their government official aircraft. So whenever Putin flies anywhere, this is the aircraft he will fly in. And as well as that, one of these actually visited Dallas very recently after the invasion of Ukraine. In fact, this aircraft flew into Dallas to pick up some expelled Russian diplomats from the DC area to take them back to Russia. So that was pretty cool. In the height of tension between the West and Russia, Russia actually flew one of these right into the heart of the West, into DC. So that's pretty interesting. But yeah, for example, I can have this in a Dallas update in the future to kind of replicate that. But for now, this is just going to sit in my collection until we have Dallas ready to go. So with that being said, we are now going to go ahead and open up this model. And here we go. It's a very weird aircraft, as you can see. It's like a really stubby version of the A340. It's even got the middle landing gear that the A340s have. So it's just like a really stubby Russian Airbus A340. But starting off at the front of the aircraft here, as you can see, we have the cockpit windows. We have Il-96 on the front there. We have the L1 door here, the L2 door. We have this kind of Russian flag thing. We have the white, the blue, and the red kind of stretching down the fuselage there. Moving to the middle of the aircraft. Now, I don't speak Russian, but I would presume that says Russia on the top there, but I'm not really sure. As I say, I don't speak Russian. And then we have the 4 engines of the Il-96. The landing gear doesn't really support the fuselage. As you can see, it does wiggle back and forth like that. And if you can see under there, the middle landing gear isn't really touching the ground at all, which is pretty interesting. So I think Phoenix do need to work on the landing gear issues on this mold, but apart from that, it does look like a pretty cool mold. And then finally here at the rear of the aircraft, we have the rear door. We have the winglets with the Russian flag on the winglets as well. And then here we have the registration, which is Romeo Alpha 96017. And then on the tail, it's a pretty bland tail. It's just got the Russian flag, of course, here, but apart from that, it's just a grey tail. And apart from that, that concludes this aircraft and this unboxing. My Russian or Soviet aircraft collection is slowly growing. It's been growing with, of course, some of the molds that we've had being released. For example, I've got the IL-62, now I've got the Tupolev 204, we now have the IL-96, we have the IL-72, and of course we have the new mold from NG coming up pretty soon. I forget what the aircraft's called, but we should have that in my collection pretty soon. I do want to get to the Air Courier version of the aircraft. But yeah, so my Soviet and Russian collection, it is growing pretty slowly, but it is still growing, and this is another addition to that collection. And so yeah, just like that, that does conclude this unboxing. Some pretty amazing models, honestly. No broken models, which is pretty impressive. These models are just some really nice models that I can't wait to add into my collection, and these are also going to be very useful as well. As I said, I can't wait to add this into either a Dallas update or just to be a part of my kind of presidential collection. We then have, of course, two more military aircraft added into my military collection. This is going to go really good alongside my other C-17s. Of course, I have the Royal Air Force C-17, the Royal Canadian C-17, and the Strategic Air Command C-17 as well, so that's going to look really good alongside those. And of course the KC-135 joining my other two KC-135s. The Breeze Embraer 195, that's probably going to have to sit a little bit inactive until we get some service into the DC area. And as I said, I can't wait to add this model, the American Eagle Embraer 170, into some DCA updates soon. So with that, I want to thank you very much for watching today's video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.